The Dreamlands. Our story begins in the ancient Dreamlands, long after the world was born, but long before today. Some people believe it didn't exist. This is a story of the life of nobles in the Dreamlands, but only one of many that prove it was real. The people in the Dreamlands were a peaceful people, but there were many different groups that lived their lives in very, very different places, but were all part of the Dreamlands and were ruled by a royal king and queen. They ruled together wisely and kept peace among the many peoples. There was, however, an old bitter wizard who lived in the mountains near the grasslands of Parg. The wizard hated the people of the Dreamlands and often tried to disrupt their lives. And so our story begins here in the Dreamlands, in the northeastern town of Ilikvad. The prince, son of the king and queen, and the future ruler of the Dreamlands, was traveling to Gak to see that the local people had grown what the kingdom needed for the coming winter. It was still late in the summer, but preparations needed to be made. Gak was important for the whole kingdom because it made a lot of the food for the kingdom, but not all. Gak was on a river valley area. Winters were cold there, and summers were cool. It was a good land for farming because of its climate and tall and short grasses. The land was flat and easy to work. The Ad people of Gak also hunted bison, large cow-like animals. It was important for the meat in the kingdom. The prince, on his way back to the palace in Hazeth, was suddenly stopped by the wizard. It was days before the king and queen learned about the prince being taken prisoner. They could not understand why, other than that the old wizard truly was evil. The king and queen sent missions of their bravest and strongest knights to capture the wizard, but he proved too powerful for them. What could they do? Strangely enough, this small noble woman named Dora stepped up and requested an opportunity to rescue the prince. You see, the prince and Dora were to be married in the next year, and they were deeply in love. Dora was not as strong as the knights of the kingdom, but was just as brave and even more clever. The king and queen received a letter from her, but they did not allow her to go, feeling that it was too dangerous for such a small woman. Dora was from Ilikvad, far north of the palace in Hazeth. It was quite far away, and it took a long time to communicate. It was flat like Ilikvad, but winters were very cold and summers were cool. There wasn't a lot of farming, but the people were good at fishing. Ilikvad was important for the kingdom. It was rich from mining. There was a lot of oil that was useful in many ways. People there could hunt for grizzly bears and caribou. The Nak people of Ilikvad spoke the same language as the other people in the kingdom, but they had an interesting accent. The north was also known for the cold frozen ground called tundra and huge glaciers. The north was not an easy place to live, but many of the Nak people, like Dora, were very tough indeed. Dora decided to rescue the prince herself, so in the night she packed some supplies and set out on her journey. The road to Gak was quite easy to travel. It was still summer, and the land was flat. The people of Gak, the Ad people, made her feel welcome and gave her shelter, but laughed a little at her accent. She used the river system near Gak to travel more quickly. The roads were more dangerous from bandits than the river pirates. Because Gak was close to Hazeth, the journey was quite safe. From there, Dora had traveled to Selofaith through the rolling hills. By this time, it was the autumn and getting cooler. It was usually cool in Selofaith because it was so close to the North Sea. Selofaith was known for having evergreen trees, like in Hazeth, but it also had big leafy trees too. Building a farm was difficult because of the many trees. The Go people of Selofaith were famous for building strong log homes, so staying there was comfortable. They also built strong wooden ships they used for fishing. Fish was the major food in Selofaith, but the people also hunted moose and deer. In Selofaith, Dora ate moose for the first time. The beaches were beautiful, but cold as winter was coming. As Dora traveled across the strait with some Go sailors, a storm began to rage. The ship crashed back and forth between the waves. Dora felt ill, but kept the prince in her mind to keep her going. As the ship was thrown about in the water, parts of the sails, as the ship was thrown about in the water, parts of the sails were thrown into the ocean. Dora was thrown into the sea, but grabbed a piece of wood from the ship, which saved her. When she awoke on the beach at Hilnith, she was taken to a home by one of the Nad people. The Nads also had an accent, because they were separated from the kingdom by the strait. The Nads at Hilnith were a special people. They had more than one city. The second one was inland at Kiran. There were a lot of factories there. In fact, Dora had bought a new sword made from the minerals in the ground. The Nads' land was made of rolling hills and big leafy trees, but they also had many fruit trees, which were a good source of food and easy for Dora to carry in her pack. The Nads were farmers too. Kiran was cold now because it was winter, but in summer it was hot and humid. As she traveled on, she saw animals she had never seen before, raccoons. There were moose and deer there as well, but a little different from what she saw before. Dora was nearing the end of her journey, which took her further west than anyone had known. She traveled over the mountains of Uathan, but only with the help of an Uath guide. The mountains were high and cold and difficult to pass. She was told that Uathan was mild near the southern sea. That brought a lot of rain, however. Dora was traveling over the mountains and further on to Parg. She saw people fishing along the river and the riverside. And on the riverside, Dora saw mountain lions coming down for a drink of water, as well as wolves and bears. She was feeling safe on the boat. The mountains and valleys of Parg were beautiful, a strange place for an evil wizard. When she finally got off the boat, the evergreen trees and rainforests were difficult to travel through. Finally, at the top of the darkest mountain, she saw the castle of the wizard. Dora was frightened, but her prince was waiting. This was the place where every other knight had failed. The wizard, being a wizard, naturally knew of Dora's journey and prepared several traps for her. Gozlebats attacked her, but she swung her sword with skill. Goonie trolls from faraway lands of Manar. They were big, hairy, and ugly. They were strong too, but Dora was quick and could run faster. She was much smarter too and easily escaped them. Dora finally found the prince in his cell, locked. She had a clever idea to stop the wizard in all of his trouble forever. As the wizard approached the cell, Dora was sure to speak loudly so the wizard knew exactly where she was. As the wizard entered the cell, Dora pulled out a small dagger, a knife, which she bought in Uathan. The wizard laughed as she slowly moved along the wall, taking all of his attention, when suddenly the prince jumped from behind the wizard with Dora's sword. She had released the prince and cleverly hidden the sword with him. He struck the wizard with one powerful blow. There was fire and wind and suddenly calmness. The sun came out, and the darkest mountain became green again, and the wizard was never seen again. Dora and the prince slowly returned to the capital at Hazeth. They were married and one day became king and queen. Together they ruled so wisely that this kingdom in the ancient Dreamlands was safe and peaceful.